Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're watching this. This is DJ Topspin, a.k.a. BLENDIANA JONES, live and direct from the Converge Media Studios, alongside the illustrious young guru.
Appreciate you, man.
You know what I'm saying?
Thanks for having me, man.
You know,
I'm in your city, man, so you know,
yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah, you had to come through and where we converge and have like a little conversation, man.
Absolutely.
You know,
I appreciate you taking me around the city today too, man.
Oh man, you know, it's been a while since I, you know, played the tour guide, but you know, it was pretty light, so just up to the new Space Needle with the revolving floor and all that, so that was fun. And we picked the perfect day to do it.
No doubt. No doubt.
You know, last night we were having a conversation about favorite producers,
Right.
and as it happens often, Dilla was the topic, and I just was, I guess, trying to expound on, you know what I'm saying, the reasons why he's you know, your favorite.
I mean, it's so many different things. It's like, I don't know, for me, man, there's been certain pockets where I study people and I've come through, you know, the different eras of hip hop. So if you look at the beginning eras, it's like, you know, I'm in a certain position where I'm a child and I don't really understand exactly what's going on, but I know I love the music and I know I love what I'm hearing, but I don't know how they made it. So I started, that was like my real first thing, was like trying to figure out how do they make this music.
Right.
And then, you know, just same thing as everybody else, saving up a little money, going to the studio, trying to do it yourself, making whack beats, figuring it out, because you gotta remember, this is like mid 80s and I'm trying to like say, okay, well, how is this done? How is that done? You don't know what to do.
I remember those
steps. So, so it's just like a lot of things of a learning process. So I went through the whole thing of coming up through you know, the 80s hip hop, you know, and figuring it out and figuring out how to make those things. So I watch Marley Marl, you know what I mean, like sort of like define a era and techniques that he did of sampling one particular sound where it used to be just breakbeat loops or 1 bar, 2 bars. Then going through those eras, and I'm skipping a bunch of people, but like I'm trying to say the people that really, really influenced me, that I like studied, like Preem, you know, DJ Premier,
the mechanics
and
of
Pete Rock, and like really sitting there trying to figure out how did they make these records. So it got to a point where now I'm doing it, you know, and I'm active at it and having some success with my crew, and like, you know, I was with Tracy Lee when we was at Howard, you know, he came out with the theme and all this. Then it gets to a point where it's just like, I hear production that is like, it's in the vein of what we love in terms of like a Tribe and a Dilla and like things like that, but it's almost next level of that. And Dilla being my favorite group of all time. It's just me personally, like enough respect to NWA, enough respect to Public Enemy, enough respect to EPMD and all, but Dilla's my favorite group of all time. I got to a point where I heard this Slum Village Volume 1. So my assistant, who's no longer with me, he passed away, right? He's from Abu Dhabi. So imagine a kid reading the back of a Source magazine saying, I want to do that. I want to engineer or whatever. Comes to the United States, that became my assistant. He lived on Church Avenue in Brooklyn. If anybody knows, that's a huge like immigrant era, you know, area strip. So when I was at Baseline, a lot of the times, or even before Baseline, when I was at Crazy Cat with D-Dot, I was working for D-Dot Angeletti. So I was living in Jersey, but you know, I'm working, you know, in Jimmy Henchman's studio on 25th Street, So instead of me going back to Jersey, I would go to my assistant's crib and take a shower, you know what I mean, maybe sleep there for a couple hours, come back. Long story short, he had the Slum Village 1. And as I'm in the crib, we smoking, we doing whatever, chilling, he pops it in, plays it, and I'm just like, yo, what is this?
Pretty much.
Like, what is this? And the only thing I remember him saying to me was, nah, that's the kid that did Far Side joints. He just kept saying, that's the kid that did the Far Side joints.
Because at that point, that's what it was.
And I was like, wow, like this is just different. Like, and I'm talking about the original one, like the one that has Look of Love 1. You know what I mean? Like the original version. And I'm just like, this is just, it feels like I'm supposed to be on the street, but it's something different about this.
It's like lush.
Right. So then I started figuring out that like Q-Tip was playing, you know, a lot of his beats for people.
Right.
God bless Busta. You know, like Busta is one of those people that no matter what, he's never changed on me. He's never like, from me working in studios where I might not be in a session with him, but he may know how much I love Rod Digger because she's from Jersey, she's from my neighborhood, that's my homegirl. He'll call me in the room and be like, "Goo, we just finished this Digger album, come listen to this."
Right.
You know, like Busta always been, and Busta would be one of those ones that had a bunch of like Dilla beats. So through, you know, me hearing it from this person, that person, but mainly from Busta and a lot of people, and then like, say if Busta ran out the room, it's been a couple of times where I did this, like Busta will leave out the room and go deal with something, I'm dubbing the tape.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like everybody was like trying to
Hungry.
steal those tapes from people.
Right.
So it came to be where Jay's cousin, Beehive, was, I don't want to say managing him, but I guess just helping him. You know how you know people in a different city? Like, yo, if you give me some work, like help me out.
Yeah, he was kind of doing his New York thing.
Yeah, so I went to Beehive and I was just like, yo, like, if it's ever possible for me to sit in a room with him and do a session with him, I'll do it for free. I just want to know if it's real.
Right.
Because at that moment, sometimes you get a new producer and you be like, oh, the beats are incredible, and then you get them in the studio and you find out it's really they man in the basement, they really the person that just got the connects, and, you know, they know people.
Right.
So I wanted to see if it was real, and it was like the only time I've ever like had a session with Dilla, it was just me and him, and the MPC 3000 and a bunch of weed and a bunch of records. And we might not have said 3 sentences to each other for that whole like 8 hours, but it was just passing weed back and forth and sort of not, and he was just very quiet and was just making the beats. But I was noticing certain things in his sound as to why it sounded the way it did before a lot of other people did. Right? So of course, I'm not over his beat machine, but in your mind, you're like, yo, is he quantizing or not? Right? So you kind of guessing, but then I was noticing the way he was chopping. My mind at that time was chop the snare, chop the hi-hat, chop maybe 2 kicks, so I have the like ghost kick, the one that don't got as much velocity off the record, and then the hard kick, and so I got my boom, you know what I mean, for the snare.
Yep.
What I was noticing was like he was sampling from the kick, the hi-hat, and whatever space was up until the next snare. Right. That was on one pad. Then it'd be a snare, hi-hat, you know what I'm saying? All the way up, maybe a ghost kick, and then all the way up until when the main kick come back. So he was combining these things that wasn't just like raw kick, snare
standalone sounds.
So for me, that's one of the reasons why I had a lot of swing that it did.
It just had layers of ambiance touching each other, you know, with the sequence.
And he wasn't quantizing.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that he did was dope because he would like put the headphones on, and you know he would sift through the records like live out, like the record was going into the 3000, and I would hear that, and he would sift through it. But then when it was time to make the beat, he put the headphones on, and I didn't hear him actually. All you hear is just on the pads. Right. And then he would take the headphones off and play it, and I'll just be like, man, I don't know how he did that. Right. And I'm looking at the record that he used. You know what I mean? To this day, he's probably the only producer that I know the record that he sampled, but I can't recreate the beat. Right. And even if I did recreate the beat, it's not gonna have the exact same swing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's cats that can do that and you know, have the scientist brain and can visualize, okay, this is what he did, but you know, it's not gonna never snack like the author.
And then what started happening was his tapes started floating around, and not tapes of like, okay, we putting out official albums. This is him when he would be trying to sell beats and he would make these tapes. They become famous now. Right. You know what I mean? That we call the donuts.
The batches or whatever.
Yeah, batches, donuts, whatever it was. I think the 2005 one is probably the one that like everybody has studied and probably is the father of a whole nother genre of music. But there were a lot of them that didn't just make it to the internet. So at that time, that was the thing. It was like, yo, he gave so-and-so a beat tape, he gave so-and-so a beat tape, and then you would just try to hear it or whatever. And what you started noticing was this like, one of the things that we did back then, or one of the things that you aspire to be, was your own unique sound, right? I'm being in the tradition of what we do, but I want people to say this is a Young Guru beat by pure. I can listen to a Primo beat know that this is a DJ Premier beat just by the beat itself.
Right.
I can know this is a Pete Rock beat. I can notice it, like
right.
the Dr. Dre. So the thing was to make your own signature. I was noticing like every 4 months, he was completely changing. Like like there's errors of Dilla.
Different chambers.
Yeah, or just like this batch is all break beats. You know what I mean? Like traditional break beats, and I'm just chopping them in ways that people never thought of before, right? Then this batch is all programmed drums with me playing Moogs.
Right.
And then this batch is me getting into my prog rock bag.
Right.
And then this batch, like every couple months, it was always completely different. And the feels and the vibes was different. So it was just like, for me, he was I don't know, I've said this so many times, and I don't think people really understand what I mean. He was the Michael Jordan of beat making, because he took, like Michael Jordan took what everybody in the NBA did before him, from Dr. J to Larry Bird to Magic Johnson to whoever you name before him, and put it all together and made it something better than what they were individually.
Yeah.
He, and when I say he, I'm talking about Dilla, showed a mastery of every single style that we've ever seen. He has Midwest swing. He has West Coast beats. He has down south beats before anybody was calling it trap.
Yep.
He has, of course, like East Coast, hop. He has, just so many different chambers and flavors of where he went with music and understanding. Because to me, the only thing that differentiates styles of hip hop is really the drums.
Right. Because
you could have a trap pattern and put samples on it, and then that's Juicy J. Right. You know what I mean? Right. And you would call that a whole other thing but he's sampling the same way, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, it all depends on the swing of the drums to say like, this is Memphis. Yep. This is a Detroit sound. This is a Chicago sound. This is a New York sound. This is a Miami sound. This is an Atlanta sound. It's all just the drums.
The drums is where it all starts. Like even the stuff I produce, like for my group Sensimilla, like just off kilter, different impulses and trigger points and even syllables. Like, there's syllables and stuff that you're verbally, but there's even syllables in percussion and even polyrhythms. Like that's the reason why like reggae and dancehall and Afrobeat is makes your body pop out, because of how these things are placed, and these things that make your body do all this other thing. And once you start getting into understanding like the science of beat making and even body movement, or even mood making, this all these elements and it's all these.
I think he exhibited that for us,
concoctions,
in ways that, like, okay, say for instance, you just said reggae, right? So me studying reggae and being such a huge reggae fan, when I studied the music and I'm like, okay, in hip hop or what we did, we're the children of James Brown.
Exactly.
Right? We are, when James Brown created that funk and said the emphasis is on the one, right? Where if we were looking at, say, the waltz or something, it's like the emphasis is on the upbeat. It's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Like we're going up when we dance. You know what I'm saying? On that beat. Whereas James Brown's like, no, the rhythm is the one. Then we do whatever, but we always got to come back to this one. So our hip hop is where we got the kick on the 1. You know what I'm saying? The snare on the 2, another kick on the 3, another snare on the 4. Right? That's 4 to the floor, basic music. Yep. Dilla was the one that showed me, like, okay, I studied reggae where the kick and the snare come on the 2 and the 4. Right. Right? So it's like,
exactly.
Right? He would do beats where there's no kick on the 1.
Exactly.
It sounds simple, but it's mind blowing when you first hear it. Yep. Where it's just like, oh, nah, because that's the first thing I'm gonna do when I'm gonna just start with the kick and the snare. But I'm like, no, he started with the sample and was like, no, don't put no kick on the 1. Right. Because another thing that he would do, which was he was notorious for, he would never start his beats just like press start on the beat machine, right? It was always pre-running and then it would kind of fade up, or it never.
You never knew where the one. You never knew where the 1 was, right? Because it would just fade in and fade out. And you'd be like, what? I mean, a lot of them be so quick. You'd be just like, what the hell was that? And you would make up your own one. And by the time you hear the real song, you realize the one was something else.
Right.
And you know, and
so it opens your mind to be like, yo,
right.
okay, all these rules I made for myself, he's breaking all of them, but it sounds really good.
Right.
You know, like these rules of like the kick goes on the one, but the main rule was that I discovered from him, or I think that changed my way of thinking.
Right.
And again, this is from an evolution. This is from us being record diggers, you know, in the 80s, and then really when you get some money in the 90s, right, where you can go in and say, I'm gonna spend $500 on some record. I wasn't doing that in the 80s. I was a kid, you know what I'm saying? I'm born in 74.
Right.
So in 85, I'm 12. I'm spending paper route money trying to keep up with the latest records to go to a party. I ain't got money to dig. So when you do dig and you start doing that, it's just like, okay, now your mind is taken to a place where I'm gonna become the elite digger.
Right.
In that time period, in that late 80s, early 90s, the whole point was I'm gonna find the records nobody found and flip it, and they're not gonna know what that is. It's gonna be like, what is that sample? That was our goal, was to just go through endless amounts of music to figure out samples that nobody used before.
Right.
So if I'm digging and I run across something and say Pete Rock used it, I'm like, oh, that's where Pete got it from?
Right.
But I'm not using it.
Exactly.
Because I'm like, Pete already
he was already on this, he walked this path already.
Yeah. So I would try to find, I would be the one to be like, oh, he didn't use this. It's other dope stuff. Why didn't he use this on this album, right? It's other dope stuff on here.
Right.
What Dilla showed me was that he would take well-known samples and flip them in ways that we never thought. So it opened my mind to be like, no, all those samples that I passed over that I never even thought about a new way of doing, I need to go back and revisit those. All the popular ones, all the canon, all what we call canon, right?
For sure.
All the things that are like, as soon as you play it, it's like, oh, that's popular, that's urban. No, he was taking those and being like, no, I'm gonna show you the other way, and to show you that it's 5 ways you can do this.
I mean, break it down to the molecule, you know, to the half note, you know, and you know, and make the half note echo out like a chorus, you know. But I heard what's that on the Rhyme remix, the Keith Murray?
Oh yeah.
When I heard him do that to Nautilus. Just the forever fade out. Just like, okay, how does this guy just control? Just when you just manipulate a record, you'd have it do your bidding. You know, like,
because he's really looking at it as notes.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like as notes, and then
versus just loops, or you know, and even. Yeah. And
understanding the machine, like, I think, you know, it took me a while with that 3000 to even realize that there's a delay in the 3000. It took me a while, you know, we were coming from, like, looping the end of something was cool because we had that in the SP.
Right.
So I was used to that. But
the magic loop,
but just the delays of actually being in the beat machine of the 3000, or you're like, did he tap it all the way out? Or did he just, like, program it? Like, like how did he, it was just, his creativity, man, and then
all that,
him being a muse for a whole movement. If you were ever in a room with him, you could understand how he could be the quiet guy in the back of the room and not care about the other stuff. But he's just a modern day, I'm trying to think. If you play guitar, you may know who Shuggie Otis is, but the world don't know who Shuggie Otis is.
Right.
But any guitar player worth their salt is gonna, if I say Shuggie Otis, they know exactly why I'm saying his name.
Right.
He's the muse that made the people that you worship as a guitar player.
Right.
That's what Dilla is.
Yeah.
He made the producers that you worship come back and be like, yo, I gotta get better, or what is this? Or this guy is different, or it's just, we've never seen one of those.
Right.
And I think before, now we're at a position where we have so much software, we have the internet.
Right.
We see producers that have proficiency. It may not always be good, but they have proficiency. We see a lot of people putting up beats consistently every single day, right? That kind of didn't exist back when Dilla first started doing that, of like these many beats in this month, and then you hear another tape with these many beats. It was more, the thing was, I'm gonna make beats and I'm gonna walk around and try to sell these beats. We didn't necessarily hear them just all stressed out with like, yo, this guy really made 100, and I knew guys that made 100, but they'd be okay.
Right.
No, all of these are really good. Like I said, to me, there's a whole genre called lo-fi that is studying what he did for 3 months, and it creates a whole other genre. He would have been off that.
Yeah, I mean, It's a lot. Hindsight is 2020.
Right.
You can look at it and there's plenty of Dilla students.
Yes.
And disciples and things of that nature. And you could look at things.
My problem, though, not to stop you, is that it gets gentrified.
Yeah, formulaically, anything that that gets simplified enough to commodify.
Right.
Yes. You know what I'm saying? And it stands that chance to ultimately end up kind of sullied. But same thing like a K-Tronada. There's billions of K-Tronada lights. Where it's like, okay, I can hear that you thought you dissected him. Or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Okay, that's your equation, your K-Tronada equation, and with everybody using the same machinery, it's real easy for everything to sound real clone-ish.
Right.
And
but where are you in that? Where's the you? Where's the what's your voice? That was the whole point of us. It was like EPMD didn't sound like Kwame, didn't sound like Public Enemy, didn't sound like Latifah, didn't sound like I can go NWA or whoever you want to name. Right? Everybody was different, but everybody toured together, or you was really you. Or if you just a funny dude who happens to have a really good DJ, then I'm Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If you just are like, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. Like the same area birthed Schoolie D. So it's just like Schoolie D, Fresh Prince, but they being themselves.
Exactly.
So now it's like that thing becomes a thing of the imitation is only supposed to be the first part of your journey.
Well, you shouldn't just stop there.
Yeah, imitation is the very first, when you're being creative, right? You imitate, look, that's the natural thing. You look at something and you go, I like that.
Right.
I want to do something like that. Right? So imitation is how you get in. Whether or not you're a photographer, whether or not you're a rapper, whether or not you're a singer, whether or not you're a beat maker, whether or not you're whatever. You're looking at something and going, yo, da da da. And then
finding it out personally, like okay,
mechanics, how it's done, what do
put
they
yourself
use,
put yourself in that position to you're walking in those steps to figure it out.
But at certain points, you got to stop and ask yourself the question: who am I? What's my voice? What am I doing? It's the people that are like, oh well, I'm doing this old to 90s hip hop. And I'm like, that's great, but I lived through the 90s.
Right.
What does boom bap in 2025 sound like?
Right.
Think 5 years ahead of time. Like what does that sound like? If you can still be boom bap, you can still be whatever you want to be. Right. But what does it sound like then? What would Dilla be on now?
Shoot.
Is the question. Because if he kept moving and kept moving and kept moving, he gonna figure out or I really would love to see what would he do with Ableton? What would he do with Logic? What program would he use? Would he do a combination of the 3000 in Ableton or Logic or Fruity Loop?
Because the possibilities are endless now.
Or would he go even the route of like we see now? Like would he use an iPad? Would he like any of those things? Because it's just like you never know what that person would have did or would have been into. But what I do know is that he wouldn't be repeating himself.
True.
That's the only thing I'm absolutely certain of. He would not be repeating himself. So he's not going to go back and get the 10cc record and be like, oh, I'm going to try to recreate. He already did it years ago. That's the point.
Some avant-garde. That's, when you was like, what would Dilla sound like 2000? Like, almost remind me like some Rock Marcy. Like, I just heard the new Rock Marcy, and he always pushing a drumless boundary and making you pay attention enough to find out what the rhythm is.
Yes.
and really.
It's dope you said rock, because one of my good dudes, Endo, who's like a good friend of mine, record dealer, sells a lot of joints to rock. You know what I mean? And just it's always like I'm on my way to the 1500 studio in LA, and my record dealer is also like a good friend of mine, and he drives me around a lot. So he'll stop and be like, yo, I got to drop these songs off. Drop these records off to Rock real quick. So he's dropping off records to Rock Marcy. It's like, all right, cool.
Rock's one of my favorites, man, from the past.
Man, he said, I don't know if people, some people do, but I think when history goes back and looks at it, when Griselda gets to the point where people are like, oh my God, we are already now. It's the reason why I search out Or like say if Hit Boy is going, yo, I'm gonna do a Benny album, I'm hitting Hit Boy and I'm like, yo, please, I want in, bro.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? And Hit Boy's my dude. He was like, go, here, take 4 or 5 songs, like mix them. But I'm saying when that thing, which it's gonna be, gets to the ultimate level that they're pushing it to be, people are gonna look back and they're gonna be like, where did the start of this thing come from? And it's gonna be Roc Marci.
Man, he saved the East Coast aesthetic and energy with Marsburg. And I mean, he's just, I remember hearing him on Busted stuff, you know what I'm saying? And he's a lot more hype back then. But hearing him like with the UN and the Pete Rock combination, and you could tell that he was about a particular funk, and he was just
and I mean that
a screw-faced energy that's just like that turns into. I mean, then when he gets into a stream of consciousness, and it's just you're just waiting for okay, what's the next ill thing he's gonna say, and it's always something outlandish and partially funny, and makes you just appreciate you can say the pen, but almost with him it's like the paintbrush.
Yeah, because it's him on the beat and that thing of like, again, it's lessons in terms of like, what do they say, when you master something, sometimes you gotta unlearn what you already know, right?
Right.
So there's no goddamn way before those albums that I would have did an album with no drums on it.
Right.
No way, you know what I'm saying? Like where you chopping the sample, you're like, stop, that's it.
Right.
We'd have kept going. I'm layering, you know what I mean? This is what I know. I've been studying this forever. Like, but for him to just be like, nope, that's it. Stop.
Some of it's so it's that aesthetic, and I was just talking to someone recently about that same feeling. Like he's like a walk-in, blaxploitation soundtrack. You can. It's that whole energy where it's kind of like on some Camp Lo, where it's like it's its own. I mean, they're really more so like we're creating our own language, type of. But it's like okay, that's when you're there, you're really in that mode and in a wave when you're on some Camp Lo shit. And rock kind of gives you that same immersion.
Cause you talking to the people, you talking to the person that like when I wanted to like okay when I'm with Ninth and I'm doing like people that are literally telling me now that boom bap is never gonna do, you know what I mean? So it's like okay cool, I could do it for my people and we could understand it and learn it, you know what I'm saying? But then for me to go and just, mess with a Rhapsody album and then for her to be Grammy nominated with us doing boom bap is like, yo, okay, we shutting up the, you know what I mean? Now, that's what I mean, it's justified now where we can still be carriers of the sound and get recognized to a certain degree. So that's all I needed was for Dr. Dre to say, yo, that girl can rap. I'm like, yo, my job is done. My job is done.
I mean, shoot, in the same breath, like this year's Grammy Award nominees for the male side, man. Nothing but boom bap.
I would have never thought that Jay Electronica's album was going to get nominated. I would have never thought Nas's album was going to get nominated. I would have never thought like, you know what I'm saying? Like D Smoke is in there. So it's just recognizing that people are, and of course, like what Freddie Gibbs has been doing on the independent thing is just ridiculous. So all of those things are there. But again, it's just like, I could come and mess with a Rhapsody and say, okay, producer from Seattle, Eric G, right? Yeah. Come in, do what you do. But not only is Eric G gonna give me boom bap, he's gonna give me trap, he's gonna give me whatever flavor I ask him for, but it's still him, it's still his thing. And I can build around that. And then it's like Ninth with the whole, like Ninth recognizing that and being like, okay, we need Eric G, let's add him into the Soul Council. And it's like, it's Ninth, it's Knots, it's Eric G, it's, Crisis, it's, all the people that we have, like everybody, from E. Jones to our label manager, Cash, everybody make beats. From me, I'm the engineer, you know what I'm saying? All of us have music inside of our camp. So, that sort of thing is what I take pride in. You know what I mean? I take pride in those things. Or like, mixing De La Soul albums, you know what I mean? And it's just like Jake One just goes crazy on Rock Cocaine Flow. And I'm like, okay, this is a dream come true. Because I'm in here with I told you they're my favorite group of all time. So I'm in here, but it's like that sound is still carrying so much longer. It makes me proud to be able to say like, okay, as much as y'all understand me for Jay's stuff, this is also where my heart and soul is at.
Right.
You know what I mean, sort of thing. So that's what it is for me, for Dilla. So are there bigger producers that have a longer, yes, Manny Fresh has 900, you know what I mean, songs or whatever. But it's also a lot of people that are judging that have never heard all of the Dilla beats that aren't published songs. We do. And we treat them just as special, or even more special than other people's songs.
For sure, there's there's definitely the air of the sharing the files, sharing the beat tapes, and
I swear to you, that 2005 beat tape, it was everything.
Or just and stuff eventually getting released, beats off of like the Yes album and Joints. I mean, he's produced some of the coldest, like just remixes where you turn the whole flavor of a song inside out to where you're like, I remember receiving promos, the kind of the Uma era, Busta promos, Wuha, Airworks, 5 different remixes on the joint, and just, I mean, all that. I mean,
just hearing the flavor on major things like "Got Till It's Gone." You know what I'm saying? It's like, yo, that is the chamber.
Right.
That's the chamber.
No, I'm saying, but even stuff like that, like
on a
Jackson for sure.
joint.
Yeah. When it said Jimmy Jam and Cherry Lewis, I was like, really? But did you know? But did you? Can you look me in the eye and say that you did that? Really? Yeah, and then you hear all the remixes, and it's like, somebody had control.
Yeah,
someone had ultimate control, and this is just variations. And I see a Jimmy Jam and Cherry Lewis touch, but stuff like the SpaceX remix, like that's one of that's one of the hard
crazy,
and like my guy House Shoes, like he's the only person that I think that existence has that instrumental. It's like, but George just so Screwface and just the finer parts of beat making. It's just everything placed exactly where it's for maximum smack.
Those things that he introduced, I think nobody was doing the almost like the feel of what a live DJ would do when he would do the drops on every beat.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? There's always a move the fader over thing.
The power of it. I was talking to someone else about that, when early days, like myself, Vitamin, the early tribal stuff, where we're figuring out finally how to even have that much control. The first samplers we got like Rollins, just 4 banks is super limited. So we're doing all that kind of magic loop stuff. You get a drum with like pong chicka chack ticka tick, then you loop it out chicka chack ticka tick ticka chack ticka tick. That's the eternal loop on that thing, but you're triggering on a 4 count or whatever. So you're finding you're building all these little magic loop layers and finding the magic of those limitations. But by the time we find out how to actually program or subtones where you can copy it out, but you don't have to to use the actual time. He's like, oh, wait a minute, I can have a kick part and a snare part separate. I mean, now I can program the kick and program the snare, or not program the kick, and actually have it come back on the snare and actually do like kick drops, or I can drop like Pete Rock without having the control of separate outs and chasing all the dope things you like about songs that already exist, and chasing it technically on some figure it out Radio Shack state of mind type shit.
It was that, and also, this dude he was one of those that gave the nod to all forms of MCing. So it was just like, there's again, without copying routines and copying the Cold Crush, that to me is when you say fang, tap, Sarah. You say, what, chin up,
where you got
this, that, shh. Hey, y'all. Texas for y'all. It's a routine. For 3 MCs to say the same, and then now you get into, but it's also like when he got into his MC bag, he was nigga man. Like he got into his MC bag so crazy.
Aggressive.
You should have let somebody else
hook it. Thelonious.
Numbers look crooked like King Kong shook it.
Make him envy. like the rough draft, like the aggressive chamber was just like so stank face. It's like
his verse on how did he start that joint?
Which one?
I'm trying to think. You'll know what I said, and they're gonna have to edit it together because it's gonna take me a second. Oh man, it's this one verse. I'm trying to think of Dilla. How does he start it? But it's just like my point being is just like after making all the beats, after he's like one of the best MCs.
Right to bounce around on a beat. That's like he's and talk a maximum amount of shit. Maximum while sounding so conversational, but
I ain't about
rhythmic,
shit.
But
no, wasn't me, dog. I don't floss. Nobody ain't that nigga JD. You ain't never see me balling out at the bar, right? I don't rock my ice and bounce foreign cars. And my Rover ain't the hardest Rover you ever seen. It ain't TV screens. It ain't sitting on 18s, dog. I ain't singing my thing and my chain don't swing. I ain't doing my thing. I ain't doing a thing. I ain't ball out with no clicks at all. But I do show niggas how to spit this raw. Flow make the hoes put the dick to jaw. SV bitch, what the fuck you thought? That's Dilla.
Negative, raise it up. Raise it up. Yeah,
that's him.
Yeah, stank face,
one of the
rhythms.
Best.
Like, yeah. And
that's why he's my favorite, bro. It's just like, he's the muse that whenever I get into this position, because sometimes I think I know too much. And that's a problem when you're an artist, right? I know too much, so I can do a lot of. So sometimes it's hard to start. Like I can go any road.
Right.
Which road am I going down? Because another thing about making music is commitment. Like commit to this. Let's get this. No, it's not a slow song. Right. It's not make the song.
Yeah, the meandering. We got to cut through the meandering.
So sometimes when you know too much, it's like I could do this, I could do that. It's like no, like
focus up.
Focus, and that's what he showed me. Was like, yo, like. Pick what this is, go to it, move on to the next thing. If you are in this idea of, I could have did this, well then do that for the next beat. Save that, write it down, do whatever. But
execute.
Execute.
What's in front of you.
That's been my biggest problem that's the difference between like me and Knife. Knife is like he'll make 20 beats in a day. And boom, 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 boom. And I'm so much the perfectionist, and is that the right snare? He like, go, nobody cares.
Right.
Like it's the feel, bro. Do it feel good. We can do all that later. That's the Pac statement where he like, yo, y'all take, talking to the outlaw, y'all take it too long. He like, yo, you write your verse. The last thing you said, that's the hook.
Right. He ready to do the formula of how to make songs. We're trying to stockpile songs. Why are you taking so long to stockpile songs? We know the formula for making songs. Make more songs.
Yeah. Is that thing. But again, this is me with my analyzation. That's where my focus. So that's why, again, he's my favorite, is that he brought these things out in me at a time when I felt like I had mastered certain things. But when you, again, the problem with mastering something, like what you were hitting on before, you see something, you say, oh, I'm gonna learn how to do that. By the time you master it, it's old.
Right.
Things.
By the time it can be defined by a quote unquote layman.
Yes.
You know.
By the time you can afford it, the car's not important.
Exactly.
It's that statement, you know? It's that statement. So we all looking at that car at the same time. If you ain't got the bread now, somebody walked in there and bought that car now.
Right.
If you like, yo, I'm gonna save up 4 months, 5, by the time you can afford, the 2021s is
exactly.
Out. So that's what I'm saying in terms of beats. So even when it's like, it's not mastery of a particular style of like, I'm going to copy this, it's mastery of techniques. So then that way you can apply it to anything.
Exactly.
That's the whole point. So that's what I had to learn and reteach when it goes back to the forgetting everything you know. When you tell somebody that has studied music and be like, that's wrong. No, it's not. It feels good. It's wrong to you because you studied this thing that tells you that this 1 goes with this 3, with this 5, with this 7. But I'm not looking at it that way. You know, like that. I'm playing the cracks in between the notes.
Exactly.
The things that aren't noted on those charts.
Man, the way player starts.
The fact that it doesn't say player.
Yeah.
The fact that it actually says Claire.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's not saying player.
Exactly. Stuff, but just and 2. It starts on and 2.
That's what, it would never start on just the 1. Or it starts with a record
yeah,
anything. Or to go from, there's no way if I made Look of Love 1 that I would even touch that record ever again. It's a
right. And there's like 3 of them, so
there's no way I would touch it again. He's done it so many times, and they all sound good. Different drums, different. Look of Love 2 is the staple.
Right.
But for those of us that know, Look of Love 1 is like the heart. The one that starts with the audience in the beginning, like that's the one. But why would you touch that after that? It's already perfect. And then to come with the second one, and then it's just those, it's
just like
1, 2.
It's just
1, 2, and it just becomes. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's incredible.
Showcase of mastery.
Yes.
You can just like the sonics of it and the placement of it. It's just like every part of this feels as good as that part can feel.
And he might have did it in like 20, 30 minutes.
But once you are dealing with, once you're a scientist, it's really you're a mathematician. Once you figure out formulas, I mean, you apply the same type of math to the application. You might not be like formulaic and this is your cookie cutter, but you're like, okay, I know how to generate funk. I know how to generate slop. I know how to generate stiff.
If you're an engineer and you build bridges, right? You're gonna come to different creeks, different soil samples. But because you know how to build bridges, you're gonna always make the right bridge to get to the other side.
Exactly. It's knowing the topography.
I've only seen mastery like that with Jay. That no matter what time period, no matter what beat, no matter what, he's gonna fit, or even the thing to say, that ain't me. It was a joke, but it was like, I'm not throwing that auto-tune on my voice, Goo. You know what I'm saying? So that's what that was the whole thing. It's like knowing this is the hottest thing in music at the given time. But I know that that's not for me. So those choices, misfeasance and malfeasance, what do you do and what do you not do? Or just as good in terms of choices. So I don't know, that's what Dilla is for me as a complete just practitioner of audio, should I say. He's not a beat maker, he's a practitioner of audio.
I was saying earlier that my man Vitamin reminds me of the same sort of energy, like the control of a medium. Or like, in my personal opinion, my man is one of the greatest to practice in the art form of beat making, we create a tapestry and a roadmap of some sorts, the early 90s tribal stuff, Jake's involvement, development of different artists that came after us, Boom Bap Project, we got Henri, who got a project coming out. There's a lot of people that still to this day that's like, man, you covered so much of, how we were doing our thing and what have you. And it's just, it's dope when you hear like mastery.
Yes.
And it's like, and you can, for people who are into the science of these kind of things, when you run across, that chemist or that architect.
And you hear it instantly or you see it instantly.
Exactly. That master architect. It's just like when you actually see a master architect's structures, you're just like, man, that's you instantaneously, that's like none other. And you had the appreciation of the mastery. It's like, okay, he knows exactly what to do with that front to back. And Dill's definitely one of those on impact. As soon as you hit the needle, it's like, all right.
It was a change, and I think after him, we looked at music different, and I think like all great geniuses, they're not appreciated during their time, because I was definitely one of those people running around New York City like, oh my God. But I don't think in that time period that the industry itself gravitated, and he didn't make as much money as I thought someone of his talent should. But all of our geniuses sort of share that same story, and their influence is always felt after they're gone. So it was just a thing of like being super upset, super sad when he passed away, but also knowing that like I lived and like breathed in the same room as, one of those type of people that ever touched the earth. Like Picasso is different because that person touched the earth. You know what I mean? Like certain art is just, that person is just that person. And Dilla was definitely one of those. where it was just like, yo, forever and a day, no matter what we talk about with music, and we talk about hip hop, he's got to be spoken about in terms of our production.
True indeed, true indeed.
Well, I appreciate y'all having me, man.
Oh man, for sure.
Thank y'all, man. This has been, been dope to be here. I appreciate the cities. Normally we doing tours and you're doing shows. You be in the city, and you're like, how many times you been there? I've been in Seattle a million times, but never being taken around the city, never really seeing the inner part of the city, never really understanding all the different parts. And I think this was my first time like really getting the taste, the flavor of Seattle. Even mid-COVID, but it's still. I would love to see it when the streets are full and the people are out and the party is popping.
Right. I mean, I'm glad we got a chance. I mean, we came through last night and got a chance to even see some of the backstory on the Converge media coverage and the positioning and capturing this unique moment in time. And it's wild to see something that was born out of just COVID information for the CD it's ballooned to something Bobby Steele on the personnel ballooned to something that every news outlet on the planet has come to get behind the famous red phone. It was just a testament to hard work and resilience and stick-to-itiveness. So, man, I appreciate you taking the time to chop it up.
Absolutely.
Under better circumstances, potentially we're gonna have you back and break it down some more.
Yeah, I would love to come back, man. We spend a party or two together.
For sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Indeed, man. Well,
yes,
shoot.
Sir.
It's DJ Topspin, a.k.a. BLENDIANA JONES, signing off for Converge Music. All right.